Welcome everybody to the texting team for the Yang2020 campaign. My name is Drew. I am the texting director for the campaign. We're really excited that you've decided to join in on this texting program. We're doing a lot of really exciting, really revolutionary things that I don't think many campaigns out there are doing. And we ask a lot of our texters, probably a lot more than a lot of other campaigns ask of theirs. It's a big undertaking, but we're excited that you're a part of this. And that you've chosen to volunteer in this capacity. I'll give you a brief overview of the training, of what to expect on this call, and periodically throughout, I will stop and ask for questions throughout. So. But just to give you an idea of what to expect on this call, we'll start with giving a brief overview and mission of the texting program. Then we'll talk about we will talk about the technology that we use on the texting program to send out texts, and then finally we'll talk about the code of conduct. In between each of those, we will stop and I'll try to answer any questions. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Slack channel. I'm sorry, drop them into the chat here on this Zoom call. I will do my best to answer them throughout. I will keep those muted while I'm actually doing the texting program, or while I'm actually doing the training, so that I don't get too terribly distracted, as is easy to do. So, all right, let's get it started. So the mission of the texting team aligns very closely to the mission of the Yang2020 campaign, which is humanity first. We strive with every interaction that we have with a voter to have a human touch with that voter. If you have been a part of another texting campaign, or if you've been contacted by another political campaign via text, it probably doesn't happen in a very human way. If you try to respond with actual questions about the candidate, or questions about policy or things like that, generally you'll get, if you get an answer back at all, it'll be very vague, and there's not a whole lot of conversation. We try to do something a little bit different. We've learned that the more people learn about Andrew, the more people like Andrew. The more people learn about his platform, the more people like his platform. So with every interaction, we try to leave that human touch, because this is a humanity first campaign. Along those same lines, another mission is that we want to make America think harder. Again, like I said, the more that people learn about Andrew and about his platform, the more that they seem to like his platform. So with every interaction, we try to leave the people that we are texting with just a little bit more information, just a small nugget of information more, so that even if they don't necessarily support Andrew right now, the time may come down the road, after we've planted this seed, that it will grow into something where they maybe become a little bit more curious about him, or when they see him on the debate stage in the future, or hear him on a podcast, or something like that. We've already piqued their interest a little bit more. We know that this is a long game, so we want to make them think harder. So every interaction that we have, even with non-supporters, we're going to share just a little bit more information with them, so that they can learn a little bit more about it. So with the texting campaign, we primarily use it to identify, to recruit, to inform, and to mobilize Yang supporters. What you will start with is going to be the identification part. So we will, so that leads into point 4. The 3 main types of text that we send are voter identification, which again is what you will start with. That's where we text a list of people who we believe, if they know about Andrew, they will support Andrew. We also do things like event invites. So if there are rallies or voter contact events, we will text supporters about events near them to try to turn them out to those events. And finally, fundraising. It's a part of campaigning these days. So we don't have democracy dollars in place yet. So we do still rely on texting to achieve those fundraising goals. So getting started, we primarily use 2 platforms to start with to send texts and to communicate. The platform that we use for texting is Spoke. It is a peer-to-peer texting platform. Now what that means is that peer-to-peer means that there is a person sending the text and there is a person receiving the text. This isn't an auto blast service where we just send a text out to, where we just push a button and send a text out to an entire list of people. It does require a person on your end of the computer actually sending each of these texts. It is web-based, so you don't have to use your text. You don't have to use your texting plan. It's not going to be coming from your phone number. It'll come from an anonymous phone number. Well, from a phone number that isn't connected to you. Texting hours are generally going to be from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern for voter ID texts. The reason that we do that is because we can't be 100% sure where these people are. We may think that they are on the East Coast, but they could be on the West Coast. And we don't want to text them too early and wake them up and possibly turn them off. And likewise, we don't want to text people too late on the East Coast whenever they're trying to wind down their day. So texting hours are generally going to be from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be starting now. That's going to be Sunday through Saturday. It'll be 7 days a week. We use Slack for team communications. That's how we communicate as a team. That's how we relay information to you. And that's how we answer questions you may have that may come up during your conversations. We will cover that a little bit more later. So when you first log into Spoke, and after you've been using Spoke for a while, this is what your dashboard is going to look like. As you can see, you have a list of campaigns that you've been engaged in over the past few days. You can see, we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. It's on 8-9 fundraising drive. You can access your past messages, so that's conversations that you've already had with voters. You can access your skipped messages, so if there's been a point where you've skipped over a conversation, maybe you didn't know how to answer a question and you wanted to come back to it or something like that. You can access those conversations from there. Also, you can see the boxes that have the little red or orange circle on them. Those are replies that are waiting for you. So if a texter if you've sent out these texts and you get a reply back from a texter, that's how they will show up there. So you would click those to enter into those conversations. Finally, after you've been assigned a batch of texts, they will show up with a little green circle. You can see that in the top section there where it says send first text. It has a little 382. That means I was assigned 382 texts to send out as a part of that campaign. When you start sending your initial messages, you'll find a screen that looks similar to this. And this is a script that's been approved by the campaign and loaded in. There's no way for you to edit this script. This is what we've designed to go out to the texters. So in this case, we were doing a voter ID campaign, texting Catherine, saying that Andrew Yang's a Democrat who wants to help American families with the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month for everyone over age 18. Would you consider voting for Andrew? So what you would actually do is go through and send out all those texts. You can see down there in the bottom left, there's a green send button. To the right of it, it has the number of the text that you're on and the total number of texts that have been assigned to you. So you would need to send out those texts preferably before you start replying. So you can either click that green button over and over and over again to get all those out. You can hit return on your keyboard over and over to get those out. You can even hold down the return key on your keyboard to send all those messages. The one thing you can't do is use any kind of auto clicker or any kind of way to automate this process. Like I said earlier, this is a peer-to-peer texting platform. So that means that there is an actual person sending those texts. So you would actually need to sit in front of your keyboard and send out all those messages. To send out a batch of 1,000, by the way, we generally assign in a batch of 1,000, which we call a yang of texts, which I think is pretty creative. So to send out a yang of texts literally might take you 2 or 3 minutes, just holding down that key button, that key. So it's not difficult at all. But yeah, you would actually need to be the one that sends out all those messages. Once you're ready to start responding to your to the replies that come in, You will find that you have previously filled responses to answer the questions that we may be asking. So, for example, in this case, we had texted Charvella, asked her if she would consider voting for Andrew. She wrote back and said, "I saw him on Colbert and decided then I'm officially part of Yang Gang. He will have my vote." That's great. That's one of the most exciting. That's the kind that we look for. So we would mark her as a supporter. So you'd click down in the white box down at the bottom of that screen and mark her as a supporter. Doing that does two things. One of all, it marks her as a supporter in our system so that we know that we can count her as a supporter. We can plug her into events that are going on. We can reach back out to her again because we know that she's a supporter. It will also, when you mark her as a supporter, automatically fill in the response that we suggest that you send back for the supporter. So in this case, awesome. Thank you so much for your support. We're working really hard to get our fundraising goal of $3.5 million by June 30th. So that was the response that we were using at the time. Those responses can fluctuate depending on what our goals are at that particular moment. But yeah, that's what's going to populate there. On the replies, those are editable, so you can go in and change those replies to match the conversation flow. In fact, you should do that. These are the suggested replies that will kind of continue to funnel these conversations in the direction that we want them to go. But for example, if someone wrote back and said, yeah, he said, yeah, I'm Yang Gang. My husband's in the hospital, but I know he's Yang Gang too. You may not want to just say awesome back to that. You may want to add that humanity first touch and, say, oh, sorry to hear that. My thoughts are with you, whatever you feel comfortable with. But also continue to try to funnel that conversation in the direction that we want it to go for these campaigns. Opting out. Opt-outs are very, very important. So in this case, we texted Catherine. Catherine texted back and said, please remove me from your list. Thank you for all your good work. One of the friendlier opt-out requests that we receive. In that case, you would hit that orange button down at the bottom of the screen where it says opt-out. That will automatically fill in a message, says something to the effect of, I'm removing you from the list now. Thank you for your time. We don't argue with opt-outs. We don't try to persuade them not to opt out. When someone requests an opt-out, we are allowed to send them one more text after that, and that will be generally just letting them know that we are opting them out of texts. So again, no arguing, no trying to persuade them to stick around. If someone requests to be opted out, we opt them out of texts. Slack. So Slack is the exclusive way to communicate with the texting team. We don't communicate via email or anything like that. It is going to be exclusively through through Slack. So through Slack, that is going to be the way that you will request texts. That will be the way that you get updates, and that will be the way that you ask questions. So when you first log into Slack, you'll check the channel status by hovering your mouse over it at the top of the channel. This will indicate who's currently assigning texts and will also relay any important information that we're trying to relay to you. So in this example, you can see that Brady was currently assigning. You can also see where you can sign up for future shifts and check out the handbook. Also, we have a common responses doc that will be pinned at the top of the channel as well. So it's very easy for you to get access to the information that you need to be an effective texter for Andrew. When you're ready for some texts, you will tag the current assigner by typing then their username to let them know that you're ready. What they will actually do at that point is they will emoji your post so that you will know that they saw it. Then they will go into Spoke, assign you a Yang or multiple Yangs if you want multiple Yangs of texts, and then come back, reply to your post in the thread when those texts have been assigned to you. Also, you're not expected to be an expert about Andrew, about his policies, about the freedom dividend or how a VAT works or anything like that. So you can and should use Slack to ask any questions you have, whether it's about how to respond to a question, how to mark a response, ask that in the texters channel. So you can see there, for example, I put in, what do I say if they ask how he will pay for the freedom dividend? By the way, there's an answer in our common responses doc for how to answer that question. In fact, there's an answer probably for most of the questions you're going to get. One thing that you'll find as you're going through these campaigns is that you will get probably the same 5 or 6 questions over and over and over again, and you will become quite proficient in answering those questions. Which the goal of this is that you will also become proficient in answering those questions in everyday conversations. So whenever you do go out and start knocking on doors, you'll be able to answer these questions as well, or when you're having conversations with friends and family and whatnot. Okay, code of conduct. I know I blew through that really quickly. We got a lot to get through. So I want to pause for a second. I will check the chat, see if there are any questions. Does anybody have any questions over about what we've gone over so far on the call? Chat's quiet. 36 people and nobody has any questions. All right. What is the rate of responses for a Yang? Great question. Usually we see, depending on the state, depending on the questions that we ask, usually about 5%, maybe 5%. And that brings up a very good brings up a good thought. We ask that when you send that Yang of texts, don't just send them and then walk away from your computer. We find that that the majority of people, folks will respond a lot better if you respond quickly. So if you send out your 1,000 texts and then leave and then come back 4 hours later and you have all these responses that you try to work through, people aren't going to respond to that real well, because if they're responding, chances are they want to have a conversation. And you can't really have a conversation if you're responding hours later. So we ask that you devote maybe 15, 20 minutes to hanging around, answering any questions that may come up. Hang out in the Slack channel, read what other people are saying. That's a great way for you to learn. But yeah, so to answer your question, probably about 5% is usually what we will see as a response rate on those. In the Slack channel, should I be in Hustle Texting Team or the Texter Start Here channel? You're welcome, Jessica. Brendan, so you will be, when this is over, we will add you to a special channel. It's just called Texters. We will add you to that. The Hustle Texting channel is a different thing that will come along later for folks. Good question, though. Okay, great. I'm going to get a drink of water, then I will continue. So the code of conduct. Be a good guest. No arguing and no disrespect. The way I like to describe it is, imagine that you've knocked on someone's door, you're wanting to tell them about Andrew. They open the door, you tell them that you're with Andrew, and they tell you that they're a Trump supporter. You would not at that point disrespect them for being a Trump supporter. You would not necessarily argue with them about why they shouldn't be a Trump supporter. That's the best way to think of it. When you're texting someone, you are stepping into their digital personal space, and that carries a lot of responsibility. So we're not going to step into someone's personal space and disrespect them or argue with them. Along those same lines, we say good things about our candidate and not bad things about other candidates. So if someone comes along and they tell you why they think Trump is the best president that there's ever been, or if they tell you that they think Bernie is the only candidate that has a viable option or whatever, we're not going to talk down about other candidates. We're not going to tell them why they're wrong about whatever they believe. We only will build up our candidate. The common response, the canned response that we generally use, we actually have a canned response if someone says that they support another Democratic candidate. The response starts with, there are a lot of great candidates in the field. We are going to have a positive humanity first campaign, and that means that we say good things about our candidate, not bad things about other candidates. Along those other lines, stay positive. We are a rapidly growing campaign, and we are going to continue growing very rapidly. And that means that as things scale, things may break. Campaigns may go out late. Texts may be awkwardly worded. Things may kind of fall apart. That's okay. That means that you're growing. So the best thing you can do is stay positive, stay active in the channel, build each other up. All it takes is one person being negative to bring bring the morale of the whole team down. So we stay positive in the campaign. Wrong numbers always take precedent. So this is really, 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 really important. We are a data-driven campaign, and the most important thing that we're getting from these voter ID campaigns is data. So if we text someone and say, "Hey, John, I'm Drew with Yang2020, blah, blah, blah. Would you consider voting for Andrew?" And he writes back and says, "Hey, yeah, I love Andrew, but my name's not John." The most important thing that we learned from that conversation was that his name is not John, because we, at that point, don't want to continue texting him thinking that he's John who lives in Ohio, when the fact is that she is Marcia who lives in Vermont. So the most important information that we can gather is that it's a wrong number. After that, there are ways that you can drill down after you've marked them as a wrong number and mark them as a Yang supporter, or mark them as someone who supports a different candidate, what have you. But wrong numbers always, always, always take precedent. Always report threats and abusive messages to staff or volunteer managers. This is very critical. We take threats and abusive messages very, very seriously. So if someone, we always want to err on the side of caution. So even if you think someone may just be joking, just may trying to get one over on you, a random person on the other end of the text, we still want to report that, because if the worst were to happen and it was someone who wanted to do something bad, and we knew about it and didn't do anything about it, that would be awful. So always report threats and abusive messages to staff or volunteer managers. We have a threat reporting form that you can fill out, that will be in your Texter's Handbook that you can find in Slack. Opt-out requests. We talked briefly about it earlier, but let's talk about it again because it's important. The rule is, if they want to be opted out, do it. If they don't mention it, don't. Once we have opted someone out, we cannot text them again. That's just the way that it is. We lose that option. We lose that avenue of contact with them, period. So if they say something like stop, unsubscribe, quit, go away, don't text me, lose my number, anything that makes it infinitely clear that they are asking us to not send them another text again, opt them out of texting. Some things that are not considered opt-out: if they're a wrong number, if they just text back MAGA, or say that they support someone else, or tell us that we text too much without them telling us to stop. Those things are not considered opt-out. Now, a lot of times we get the question, why don't we opt out Trump supporters? There may come a time where we want to text Trump supporters. One of the great things about this campaign is it brings in people from all walks of life, from all political persuasions, and we have more than a few people who voted for Trump last time around, and there may come a time when we want those people in particular to reach out to people that we've identified as Trump supporters. There may be times that we will want to reach back out to people who say that they support a different candidate. So we don't opt out those people because we want to retain them. We want to retain the ability to text them again, possibly in the future. Texts are forever. What would your message look like out of context on CNN? We live in a time when it's extremely easy to take a screenshot of a text, post that on Facebook or on Twitter or on Reddit or on 4chan and have it go viral very, very quickly. So with every conversation that you have, you're a representative of the Yang campaign. So just bear that in mind. What would that conversation look like if you saw it on the news? Along those same lines, represent Yang's positions accurately. It's very, very easy. You may fall into the trap of thinking, hey, I could woo this one potential voter over if I kind of fudge a little bit on one of Andrew's policies. It's extremely easy for the people that you're texting to go to Andrew's website and find out the truth. And again, a dishonest text screenshotted could cause significant damage to the campaign. So make sure that you're representing his positions accurately. Along those same lines, let Andrew speak for himself. So use the website, use quotes from Andrew. You can use podcasts that he's on. YouTube videos where he's where he's been on a podcast or something like that. There are tons of links out there that we can use as resources. If you're not, if it's not something that Andrew has spoken up on, make it clear that you're speaking for yourself. So, he may not have spoken about socialism, for example, but you may want to respond to somebody who says, is he a socialist? You may respond, well, personally, I believe that human capitalism is better than socialism because blah, 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 blah. May not be a conversation you want to get into, but if it's something that Andrew hasn't specifically talked about, make it clear that you're speaking for yourself. Personalize the responses. You can and should do minor editing for conversation flow. Like I said, somebody said their husband's in the hospital. You may want to address that. If somebody brings up something that you feel like you can speak to specifically because of your personal experience, if you feel like there's a way for you to make a real connection with the voter on the other end of that text, then you can and should do some editing. But again, we're always trying to keep that conversation flowing in a certain direction. So while you can go off script from time to time, make sure you're doing your best to bring it back to the conversation. Good rule of thumb is maybe one or two off script texts, and then let's try to either get the conversation back on track or wrap up the conversation. No data is better than bad data. Again, we're a data-driven campaign, so that means don't read into text responses. If you're not clear about what that person is saying, don't mark it by what you think they're saying. Either try to clarify and get good information, or leave it blank. Always report double texting. If somebody says, hey, I just received this exact same text 10 minutes ago, or, I just received it earlier today, let us know about that. Along those same lines, there will be people that will say, hey, I've asked you 3 times to take me off of this list, and you haven't taken me off. Report that to us as well. Chances are it was a different campaign that texted them. We're able to look them up by number and find out how many times we've texted that number. And honestly, every single number that I've looked up when people have said that we've texted them 3 times, we've only texted them once. So usually it's probably confusion on their end, but we do take it seriously. So pass that information along. Follow security rules. Do not invite anybody to the texters channel. If anyone contacts you and say that they need help getting in, direct them to either staff or texting support volunteer, and they will help them get into the right place. Also, follow the naming conventions. There's a lot to this, so first of all, make sure that your Slack name matches the name that you register with in Spoke. That way, it's easier for us to find and assign you texts. If you have a generic, Philadelphia Yang Gang Slack handle, but we're going to have a hard time finding you in Spoke. So make sure that your name in Slack is at least close enough. We prefer, if you can do a full name, fine. If not, we prefer, first name, last initial, or something like that, so that it's easy for us to find. Okay, that's the end of the code of conduct. I saw a few chats pop up, so let me try to answer questions. Jasmine was helping. Thank you, Jasmine. Let's see. Yes, so texting is open from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will be texting every day. So Rob asked, how would you prefer I prioritize my time? RDN Hustle and Voluntary Outreach Team. Try to phone bank an hour or so. Yeah, so Hustle's not going to be for everybody on this call, so maybe we can take that offline. But I would say if we're in the middle of a big hustle push like we were this weekend with Weekend of Action, I would prefer Hustle. Otherwise, voter IDing is a great way to spend your time. Good question. Any other questions? No? So I guess the big question is, how do we get started? Well, let me tell you. Visit Yang2020.com/texting quiz. You'll agree to the code of conduct, and take a quiz, and that will get you started. Now, this is important. When you put your name into the form that you're going to fill out at this link, make sure you're putting in a name that I can find you in Slack. Very often I get somebody that just types in, for their name, they just put Chris or Rob or John. And guess what? There are 100 Chris's and Robs and Johns in Slack, and it's hard for me to find you. So it would be best if you could even just put your Slack handle into that name. That way I can easily find you and get you added into the Slack channel. What's going to happen after that will as those results come in, we will add you into Spoke. So keep an eye on your email, because I will send you a link on how to get started. Check your spam. Sometimes it'll go to your spam folder because I BCC a bunch of people on that. So it may go to your spam folder. So it'll come from my email address, drew@yang2020.com. After you've gotten started, after you've gotten that email, it'll give you some next steps on how to begin. One of the most important things that you can do once you get that email, actually the most important thing you can do, is go in and set your personal information up in Spoke. We can't assign you texts until we have that information set up. So go in and put in you'll click on the little circle in the top right of the screen, put in your email, your first name, your last name, and your cell phone number. You can add your state to your last name. Just make sure that your first name, make sure that the first name that you put in when you put in Spoke, when you enter it in Spoke, is capitalized correctly. It doesn't have anything else weird in it, because whenever you send out texts, that's going to be what shows up. So you don't want it saying, "Hi, John, I'm Jessica, Alabama with Yang2020." So make sure that it's something that makes sense. Great. So yang2020.com/texting quiz should be something really easy for you if you paid attention at all on this training, should be really easy for you to pass. If not, we'll still work to get you in there because we want you texting for Andrew. Joey asks, are we allowed to use our first name when addressing potential voters? Yeah, sure, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the initial message will probably have your first name in it. We can do a little variable that just automatically pulls your first name. So, but that's going to be the most information that we're going to share with them. So they won't get any more information like your last name, your email address, phone number, or anything like that. They'll only get your first name. Somebody's getting artistic on the screen. Yeah, so great. All right. We are super excited to have you on this team. Like I said, I firmly believe that we're doing things on this texting program that nobody else is doing. And so it's really, really, really exciting. And I think it's going to make you a better supporter of Andrew because you learn so much through this, through these conversations that you have. So go take the quiz. Keep an eye out on your inbox for an email from me. And then once you're in Slack, I will get you added over to the Slack channel. So y'all have a great day. I will see y'all in Slack. Thank you.